financing districts should work in the city, specifically in the 45th Ward. Would you support an expansion of the program in the ward? And how should excess TIF funds be spent? 90 seconds.
So the TIF program is a tool, an economic development tool, that in my opinion, historically has been used incredibly poorly. We've incentivized in areas where we don't need to, and we haven't pushed money to areas that sorely need that kind of investment. Where we are in the 45th Ward in general is somewhere in the middle, and that's actually where the TIF program can be very effective. In the time I've been in office, we promoted very heavily the Small Business Improvement Fund, which is kind of a subset, sub-program under the bigger TIF concept. And I know Mark Sussman's here. His businesses that are in his buildings have benefited from that. Everything from the National Veterans Art Museum to Filament Theater, Community, which is opening in a couple of days. I could go on and on about the number of businesses. Probably $3.5 to $3.75 million has been allotted in small matching grants to these businesses. So it's an incredibly effective tool used kind of in a small ball way to get individual storefronts up to a code where they can then be rented. So we've been very successful with that. We need to reform the overall use of the TIF, close down ineffective TIFs and TIFs that are in areas that don't need to be incentivized, like the LaSalle Street TIF. And I only have a few seconds, but what we need to do is surplus money and put that $200 million that we could surplus to the pension obligation to help close that gap.
Thank you. Michelle Barrett, TIFs.
TIFs are a phenomenal resource that we have here in the city. They strengthen our infrastructure, they increase development, and they create jobs. But we also need to make sure that there's transparency in the process and that they are actually enhancing areas that need it. One of the definitions that they have is a blighted area. What is the definition of blighted? Is it something that's more in a different part of the city, or is it something we see here right in the 45th Ward? It is important that we make sure that those TIFs are going to the right places and make sure that there are projects that are being done and that there's jobs being created. Once the goals are met for those TIFs, I would support that they would be used as revenue, and I would also support in extending them if need be.
Michael Diaz.
One of the things I love about TIFs is it's kind of like, I'm Catholic, and it's the Immaculate Conception of sorts. One day you have TIF, and then it kind of never goes away. And we don't exactly understand what it does, or who answers, or what's in it, or etc. But one thing is clear to me. When we think about TIFs, it just serves two goals. One, economic development and economic stability. Once you achieve that, you move on. The problem is, there are no rules in place that tell you when something should end or when something should start. If I'm elected alderman, that's the first thing I'm going to do. Second, TIFs can't be expanded, especially when you think about all the debt that we have, particularly the pension debt. I propose, working with our state legislature, and we should have a TIF moratorium until such time that we fully fund our pensions, that we have our schools adequately funded, and that our city services, police and fire, have what's rightfully owed them. Let's just stop funding it and see what happens. Quite simple in my mind. Last but not least, to the extent we have TIF dollars, we have to really believe in targeted investments. We have to leverage those TIF dollars with monies that are going to be invested by financial institutions. I mentioned small business administration loans. But one of the things we need to really look at are businesses that are going concern right now in the ward, that want to expand, that want to do better, they just don't have the money to do it. We should invest in those businesses as well as the startups. And I think if we can do that, we'll go a long way with the TIFs.
Thank you, John Garrido.
The Small Business Improvement Fund portion of the TIF is a very, very small amount of money compared to the amount of money that's there. There's over almost $2 billion with a B sitting in TIF funds citywide. $500 million a year pours into these TIF funds. It just keeps on building and building and building. And the money does not always go where it needs to go. We've got money going to proposed to go to DePaul University, to Marriott, which I understand that we need to do things to increase the economic viability of our city, but we need to pay our bills first. We need to get our house in order before we start using tax dollars to go private, or to subsidize private organizations. One idea with some of the TIF money that's there, Alderman Brendan Riley suggested, was taking half the money that's there and putting that towards the pension deficit. So that would be $1 billion that would be put towards the pensions right now. And then use half going forward just until they're caught up. So you'd have $250 million a year also going to pay that debt down. Once we're caught up, then we can reevaluate and we can figure out where all that money can go for other projects. But right now, just the way that it's being used, there doesn't appear to be any rhyme or reason of how the money is allocated, where it goes, and it definitely needs to be.